don't even want to really prosecute, would prohibit a law-abiding citizen from giving a gun to a friend as a gift. Safe storage would make it unlawful for me to have the 22 and the 20 gauge propped up by my door right now in Texas to kill coyotes and snakes. It would make it unlawful. This will not do any good. It will harm Americans, and it undermines our foundational liberties that is crucial for a free state. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from North Carolina, Ms. Manning.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, so far this year, our country has experienced more than 250 mass shootings, and it's only June. Gun violence is now the #1 cause of death of children in this country. We cannot let this continue. The Protecting Our Kids Act is an important step toward curbing gun violence by limiting high-capacity magazines, raising the minimum age to buy assault weapons to 21, and encouraging safe storage practices. If these measures had been in place, the 18-year-old gunman in Uvalde, Texas, would not have been able to buy the 2 assault weapons he used to murder 19 children and 2 teachers. The Dayton, Ohio shooter would not have been able to buy the high-capacity magazine that allowed him to shoot 26 people in 30 seconds. We can't solve this complex problem at once, but neither can we desist from taking common sense measures to help make this country safer for our children. Let's honor our oath. Let's do our job to keep the American people safe. Vote yes on this bill. It's the least we can do for our constituents.
Gentleman from Ohio.
And I yield back.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Spear.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, thank you. I believe I'm the only member of this House that is a victim of gun violence. My body is riddled with bullets. I have a divot in my leg that's the size of a football. I have skin grafts on all parts of my body. I live with that every single day. A victim of gun violence is traumatized over and over again. I implore my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, if we had a 737 that crashed every month for 12 months in this country, we would do something about it. And that's what's happening to children in this country. 1,500 kids die of gun violence every single year. We have to do something about it. All we're saying is, don't let them purchase an assault weapon until they're 21. We already say you can't purchase a handgun until you're 21. Dr. Guerrero this morning talked about decapitated heads.
Expired.
I urge you, I'm leaving this institution. Please do something. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
We reserve, Madam.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Schakowsky.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to share a conversation that I had with Anna Kate, who is a constituent of mine in my district. And she called my office absolutely distraught. This was the day of the, late in the day of the shooting. And she said that parents have really reached their breaking point right now, and that she is afraid. And she is afraid for her 7-year-old son. She said, I want to tell my child, you will be safe in school. What a simple sentence that most parents, any parent would want to say, you will be safe in school. But I can't, she said. Children continue to die, and this is on all of us, all of our conscience. There is no issue more important than this. We can do something starting today, something real. We can finally pass this legislation. Let's do it.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Escher.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the chairman. Madam Speaker, where is the soul of America in this chamber? I've listened to every speaker since the debate began. I think that Shakespeare would say, "Thou doth protest too much." We have simple, profound facts. Our children are being blown away. Last week, the first funeral, that casket could not be opened. I think every single member here is a parent. Walk behind that casket. Think of yourselves and your own children. They deserve solutions to this. This has to be more from you than damning the Democratic Party. Come on. We're members of Congress. And many of us say, can I have 10 more seconds, please? Many of us say a prayer. It's the Lord's Prayer. And at the end we say, and lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Wisconsin, Mr. Tiffany.
Gentleman's recognized for 2 minutes.
Not one word from our colleagues when it comes to the crime waves in cities like Chicago, Los Angeles, Milwaukee, Minneapolis, New York, San Francisco, and Philadelphia. To do so would be to criticize their own soft on crime policies. It's been going on for a decade now. They hope Americans ignore the inconvenient truth. Criminals don't get background checks, and they don't fear laws because rogue prosecutors financed by progressive dark money groups don't enforce our laws. These criminal strongholds in Washington, D.C. have one thing in common. They are run by Democrats who refuse to enforce our laws. This administration, responsible for a 40-year inflation high, erasing our border, and shrinking economy, will say anything to distract from their own failures. Jimmy Carter says, "Thank you for making the 70s look good." Week after week, we hear about violent criminals re-victimizing communities without being held accountable. The people furthering these policies and making our communities less safe are the same people who are fervently arguing to disarm Americans and defund the police. They're the same people weaponizing the FBI against their political opponents, and the same people who want to repeal the Second Amendment. I wish they would just tell the American people the truth instead of deploying Trojan horses. Whether it's rifle bans, 9mm bans, federal red flag laws, one thing is certain. They will not change the outcomes for the people in those cities. As some members of this body have said in the last few weeks, this is just the beginning. We will not stop. They will continue to erode our rights because they believe in a nanny state government, not a government of the people. What Americans need is the enforcement of our laws, holding criminals accountable, and protecting our constitutional rights. I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I request unanimous consent to insert into the record a May 27, 2022 piece from CNN entitled "States with Weaker Gun Laws Have Higher Rates of Firearm-Related Homicides and Suicides, Study Finds."
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise in strong support of the package of gun violence prevention bills we are considering today. Gun violence is at unseen epidemic levels in this country. We need to combat the source of the epidemic, easy access to guns. I would like to address, however, the impact of the lack of statehood for the residents of the District of Columbia on their ability to pass and maintain their own common sense gun violence prevention laws. If Republicans take the majority in the next Congress, they could eliminate DC's gun violence prevention laws, which they have repeatedly tried to do, including its ban on assault weapons and high-capacity magazines and its universal background checks. At least 7 current Republican members of Congress have introduced such bills. I have defeated each effort in Congress to overturn D.C. gun violence prevention bills, and I vow to do so again. But the ultimate remedy for congressional interference in local D.C. matters, of course, is D.C. statehood. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
We reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Castro.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to vote to do something. It's too easy for dangerous people to get dangerous weapons in this country, and we're either going to do something about it or we're not. I want you to imagine for a second that a shooter with an AR-15 goes into your child's school tomorrow or next fall, or your grandchild's school, and leaves a hole the size of a basketball in their chest, or leaves their head decapitated off their body. Ask yourself what you would ask of the people who represent you. Would their thoughts and prayers be good enough for you if that happened to your child? Would them be worried about their primary election be okay with you? The people in Uvalde, when I spoke to them, asked me how it is that somebody who's 18 can't buy beer or cigarettes, but they can go into a gun store and buy 2 AR-15s and go kill 20 people. The teachers who died, the cops who died, the children who died cannot vote to change the law. Only we can do that. This is our legacy.
Gentlemen's time's expired.
Vote yes. I yield back.
Members are reminded to direct their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise to confront the nation's leading child killer, gun violence. Passing the Protecting Our Kids Act does that by raising the legal age to buy certain semi-automatic rifles and closing the ghost gun loophole. It strengthens safe storage rules at home and clamps down on bump stocks and high-capacity magazines. Once more, House Democrats will do something meaningful to address this carnage, while House Republicans do nothing. Yes, a few Senate Republicans may do the absolute minimum, but when an 11-year-old tells Congress that she smeared her murdered friend's blood on her own body to play dead and stay alive in Uvalde, I'll take baby steps over no steps. From Uvalde and Buffalo to Parkland, Orlando, and Las Vegas, America is bleeding. And while this legislation will not end gun violence, it's a tourniquet. The deaths, suicides, and astronomical health costs are too high, and we cannot continue to forsake our national freedoms to learn, work, and worship without fear. So let's pass this legislation and reclaim America's values and confront this nation's leading killer of children, gun violence. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2.5 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Klein.
Gentleman's recognized for 2.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank the gentleman from Ohio. I rise in opposition to the so-called Protect Our Kids Act. What we saw 2 weeks ago in Uvalde, Texas, was tragic and horrific, and we should take action to prevent future tragedies such as this one. But this bill is not the solution for several reasons. First, the bill restricts the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding adults. With very limited exceptions, the bill would prohibit 18 to 20-year-olds from buying nearly all semi-automatic rifles and shotguns. During the markup of the bill, the Judiciary Chairman argued that this is applicable because these young adults don't have, quote, fully formed brains. Yet we entrust these same young adults to serve our country in the military and die for our country. We trust these young adults to vote in our elections. What's even more interesting is while Democrats believe that these young adults don't have fully formed brains, they certainly are more than willing to try and reduce the age at which a person can vote to 16. Second, the bill makes it more difficult for a domestic violence victim to keep a firearm for protection. As drafted, the bill would criminalize a domestic violence victim's attempt to seek help from a friend or neighbor in obtaining a firearm. The safe storage requirements of the bill make it harder for people to access a firearm in an emergency by mandating a one-size-fits-all approach for firearm storage. And finally, the bill's limits on magazine capacity will essentially ban many common firearms, some of which may accommodate between 15 and 30 rounds of ammunition. Overall, the bill is an attempt to restrict the constitutional rights of law-abiding citizens while ignoring the broader problems of why these tragedies are happening. Let's talk about school resource officers in our schools. Let's talk about fortifying school buildings. Let's talk about ending the dangerous mirage of gun-free zones. And yes, let's talk about mental health. We have to look for common sense solutions that make it easier for Americans to protect themselves and their loved ones. I oppose this bill, and I urge my colleagues to vote no. I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Chu.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
We cannot let America be like this. Children shouldn't be texting their family goodbye as they lay barricaded behind desks. Parents shouldn't dread having to drop a child off to school, wondering if this is a death sentence. And a grandmother shouldn't have to fear being murdered as she goes into a grocery store to get dinner. The U.S. is the only country in the world with more civilian-owned firearms than people, and it is costing us our loved ones' lives. Thoughts and prayers are not enough. They never were. We have to take action. This is what we were sent to Congress to do, to act. The bill before us today, H.R. 7910, the Protecting Our Kids Act, will save lives. We can no longer act like we are powerless to stop mass murders in our communities when it is clear there is so much we can do. Pass this bill. Enough is enough.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 2 minutes to the gentlelady from Georgia, Ms. Green.
Gentlelady is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you. In 1990, our schools became gun-free school zones. And on September 6, 1990, when I was 16 years old, my high school went on lockdown because one of the students at my school brought 3 guns to school in a duffel bag on the school bus, brought the guns into our school, and proceeded to take control of our high school. And he was the only person in the school that had guns. That's why that happened. There was no one to protect us that had a gun that day. The only person with guns was the very mentally ill, upset teenager who had brought guns to school that day to kill other students. I know that fear. As a matter of fact, I think I'm the only member of Congress that that's actually happened to. And I'm also a mom. I've dropped off my kids at school for years, wondering, would this happen at my children's school? Would they face a terrible fate like the poor children in Uvalde? This should never happen to our children. And I can't help but to point out to all of us here, while we're debating how to protect our kids in school and what we're debating about our Second Amendment gun rights, I want to point out that we're all so privileged to be in this building being protected by armed guards with guns who are protecting our lives. And I find it shocking to me that this body of Congress won't do the same thing for children all over America in schools, because we know one thing works. We know that a gun is a tool, and it's a weapon that can be used to defend yourself or defend others, and we're all lucky enough to have that privilege. But our school children aren't. If we really want to be serious about protecting our kids here in America, we'll repeal the Gun-Free School Zones Act, and we will put into action real legislation that protects children everywhere, all over America in school, with good guys with guns, the same way we're being protected. I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1.5 minutes to the distinguished member of the Judiciary Committee, the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Deutsch.
Gentleman's recognized for 1.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'm disappointed in the way that our colleagues are so cavalierly avoiding the facts. These common sense measures, when we passed them, had we passed them before, could have saved over 400 people killed in mass shootings. Since Columbine, I'm disappointed in the cavalier mischaracterization of jurisprudence. Justice Scalia said that the right secured by the Second Amendment is not unlimited. My colleagues know that the changes in this law that we're proposing today will not undermine the Second Amendment in any way. But Madam Speaker, I have two documents that inform everything I do here. One is the Constitution of the United States, and the other is this list that I wrote on February 14th, 2018, of every one of the 17 members of my community slaughtered by a killer with an AR-15 in his high school. We've heard a lot about foundational rights, foundational liberties, as if the Second Amendment is it's the sum total of the Constitution. Madam Speaker, the First Amendment matters as well. And for these 17, they have no right to practice religion and to pray for themselves or all of those who are killed every time we offer thoughts and prayers. And for these 17 and everyone killed by gun violence, they cannot peaceably assemble, as the First Amendment gives the right to all of Americans. And Madam Speaker, most of all, they cannot petition the government for redress of their grievances. Not these 17, not the 19 from Uvalde, no one killed in this gun violence. Today, we can help redress the grievances of all those lost to gun violence by passing this important legislation.
Gentleman's time's expired.
We must, we will, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield a minute and a half to the gentleman from Florida, Sheriff Rutherford.
Gentleman's recognized for a minute and a half.
Thank the gentleman for yielding. Madam Chair, I rise today in opposition to H.R. 7910 because this bill does nothing to stop human violence, which is the real problem at hand here. Straw purchases are already illegal. You can't buy a gun for someone else to get around the background check. Bump stocks are already illegal, regulated like automatic weapons, thanks to the Trump administration. And infringing on the Second Amendment rights of law-abiding Americans is not the answer. In fact, the bill before us will even make criminals out of legal gun owners. This bill would put the federal government in charge of law-abiding citizens and how they store their firearms inside their own homes. This bill puts firearms storage over and above self-defense. Instead, let's work together to address human violence problems by bolstering our mental health system, identifying individuals before they become active shooters and mass murderers, and improving our school safety through crime prevention through environmental design, CPTED. It can be done. With that, Madam Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I've heard over and over again we ought to harden our schools. We ought to have every teacher have a gun. One question needs to be asked as that argument goes forward. Why? Why do we need to do that? We need to do that because an 18-year-old was able to buy 2 AR-15s, go to the school in Uvalde, and shoot up all of the students and teachers, 19. That's presumably why we have to harden our schools. Maybe it's time for us to come to the reality that it's time for us to pass common sense gun safety legislation. This particular piece of legislation does just that. Doesn't take away the Second Amendment rights, but what it does is to provide every American with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and not to have to worry about whether their school has been hardened sufficiently to prevent an 18-year-old with 2 military-style weapons to enter that school. It's time for us to act, pass this legislation.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from New York, Ms. Maloney.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, I rise in support of the Protecting Our Kids Act. Today, the victims' families and community members from the mass shootings in Buffalo and Uvalde appeared before the Oversight Committee demanding action. These communities have faced unspeakable tragedy. It is our duty as lawmakers to listen to them and work to build a world where they will never have to see these horrific events repeated. This legislation will save countless lives from the violence these families have had to endure. We must support every title in this bill, especially Title II, cracking down on interstate gun trafficking. I have spent over a decade fighting for gun trafficking and straw purchases to be made a federal offense. The illegal interstate movement of firearms into New York, known as the Iron Pipeline, has caused countless firearms to enter our state unlawfully. Preventing gun trafficking across state lines should be a bipartisan goal. As a mother and teacher, I am horrified by these attacks on our schools, our grocery stores, and our communities. I urge my colleagues to support this bill.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the gentlelady from Florida, Ms. Kamick.
Gentlelady is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I came here today to speak on behalf of women and the parents of my district. Heck, honestly, I came to speak on behalf of all Americans who want their kids to be safe and secure in their schools and for people to be safe in their communities. I came here today to say that we all want these things because our hearts collectively break when any life is lost. We mourn for those lives lost needlessly. We need to do better, and we can do better, which is why every single member of this chamber must, without hesitation, denounce, decline, and decide and oppose against H.R. 7910, the Politics Over Our Kids Act. This is common sense. Taking legal firearms out of the hands of law-abiding citizens does nothing but empower criminals. It's already illegal to commit murder. Has that stopped murder? Has that stopped violence? No. Madam Speaker, you said in your opening remarks that, quote, protecting our kids, what could be more important than that? You said, quote, we are here for the children. You went on to say that, quote, everything we do is for the children, and that today's effort to strip our constitutional rights is, quote, a crusade for children. You must have forgotten the nearly 60 million children that have been murdered through some of the most horrific means during an abortion. All on your watch. You invoke JFK and say that our children are our best resource and our best hope for the future. Is that so? Why do you deny them their future by killing them in the womb? Sounds a bit hypocritical if you ask me. And you also made the statement that the leading cause of death for children is firearms. Then why does the data refute that? NBC News reported that motor vehicle deaths of kids from age 1 to 17 continues to be the #1 cause of death. Spare me, Madam Speaker, that you are here fighting for the children because your 3 decades in Congress reflect a record of anything but a fight for children. Certainly not the kids being trafficked at the border, not the kids being abused, not the kids fighting for their life in the womb, or the kids whose future is being stolen by abusive big government policies. If this were about protecting kids, then why does this bill do nothing to secure or harden our schools? Why was there no bipartisan efforts as part of this package? Why do these bills do nothing to address the mental health crisis that we are facing, driving the violence? It is the guns. It is not the guns. It is the people. People who are intent on committing acts of evil and violence will do so by any means necessary. That is a fact. But while you have conveniently forgotten so much, I certainly do not want to forget how many victims of domestic violence will be left without options to protect themselves if this garbage bill becomes law. Because it's the same party screaming to defund our police is the same party screaming about how you, a law-abiding citizen, should not be able to defend yourself. Finally, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that you have clearly all forgotten your oath. An oath that we took here on this chamber floor to uphold and defend the United States Constitution. The Second Amendment is a part of that. Madam Speaker, and to all my colleagues, the Constitution is not a la carte. You can either accept it all or none of it. But you cannot cherry pick it. And if you can't uphold your oath, then you should resign. With that, I yield back.
And all members are reminded once again to address their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from New Jersey, Ms. Sherrill.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, for the opportunity to speak today. Like so many parents across the nation, when I sent my 4 kids off to school this past week, I worried that they wouldn't be coming home, like so many children across the country. So I got a bit hopeful when I hear that my colleagues are speaking for women across the country, and I expected to hear then that they were going to talk about passing universal background checks because we know that 88% of the country wants to see universal background checks passed. I'm sorry, I must have missed that in their conversation. And then when I heard how devastated my colleagues are for the little children that have been dying like I am, I thought, well, great, maybe we will hear something about passing a law that restricts people 21 and under from purchasing guns like Mitch McConnell has said he's willing to consider. I must have missed that too. Because I have to tell you, we know these gun safety legislation pieces work, because in New Jersey we've passed most of them, and we've made major progress. In fact, while the rest of the country has seen gun rate deaths increase by 33%, in New Jersey they fell by 10%. So again, I'm hoping as we speak for mothers and women and children and families across New Jersey, we start to hear about how we're going to pass this great legislation. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 4 minutes to the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Bishop.
Gentleman is recognized for 4 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's repeated over and over again that the Second Amendment is unlimited. Excuse me, is not unlimited. It has limits. And no one contends otherwise. But what are the limits? Wouldn't it be nice to hear that in the debate? The limits as set forth in Heller and McDonald is that it is improper. You cannot ban weapons that are, quote, in common use at the time. You cannot require that firearms in the home be, quote, rendered and kept inoperable. The Ninth and Fourth Circuits have said that, like other constitutional rights, all of them, the Second Amendment protections apply to 18 to 20-year-olds. The dissenting judge in that opinion in the Fourth Circuit acknowledged that there is, quote, persuasive evidence of that. This bill bans for 18 to 20-year-old adults guns that are in common use. It bans for everyone ammo magazines that are in pervasive use. It requires weapons be disabled in the home, and this one doesn't violate the Constitution, I admit, but it even criminalizes a neighbor who buys a gun for self-protection for a victim of domestic violence. And the Democrats say more is coming. They use the terminology weapon of war. They intend to ban this class of weapons entirely. So you've made it clear in the House Judiciary Committee. They made it clear. I will not. I'm sorry, ma'am. You've had a lot of time. You made it clear that you will proceed regardless of what the Second Amendment says. Mr. Jones made it clearer than anyone. If the filibuster obstructs us, we will abolish it. If the Supreme Court objects, we will expand it. Do something is the mantra. It's probably worth remembering that that's short for the commonly heard phrase, do something even if it's wrong. The last thing we need is something that's wrong. What is needed is an answer. You are not pursuing an answer because, frankly, you are not grappling with the problem. Could we begin with candor? Are these disasters enough to prompt candor? Could we have some truth? You've been doing gun control since 1968. Has it worked to your satisfaction? The lady from Pennsylvania said earlier, the general lady from Pennsylvania said the country is sick, but she's misdiagnosed the problem. They say it's the guns. But, Madam Speaker, guns have been prevalent in the United States of America since before our founding. We did not suffer the mass shootings. We did not suffer the chaos in the cities like she described. Why do we have this now? Chesterton, a British gentleman, came closest. He said the disintegration of rational society started in the drift from the hearth and the family. The solution must be a drift back. Everybody knows it's true. If there's a sickness in the country, it is the product of 60 years of disintegration of American culture by the liberal project. Assaults on the family, hostility to God, cheapening life, pervasive expansion of the welfare state, ridicule for individual and parental responsibility, Soros DAs ending punishment for crime, delegitimizing, defunding, and abolishing police. Behold your handiwork. Stripping Americans of constitutional rights won't cure what ails us. Not the Second Amendment, not the First Amendment to which you're hostile, not the Fourth Amendment, not the Fifth Amendment. Join us to solve the problems you've caused. We can find answers together. I yield back.
Gentleman's time's expired, and the chair will once again admonish members to direct their remarks to the chair. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from New York, Mr. Espaillat.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of Protecting Our Kids Act. This overdue legislation will tighten gun regulations. Unfortunately, in the world's wealthiest country, we have the 32nd highest rate of death from gun violence across the planet. This is a horrific statistic that is impacting all of our districts, blue districts and red districts. In my district, gun violence has taken far too many lives, including the young life and brutal murder of Crystal Baber Nieves, working the midnight shift in an East Harlem Burger King, the brutal murder of 2 police officers in Harlem's 32nd precinct, and an 11-month-old gunshot victim in the Bronx. Yes, Madam Speaker, only 11 months old. Madam Speaker, I'm here to tell my colleagues on the other side of the aisle that this epidemic is serious. In fact, it is a public health crisis. For this reason, Congresswoman Escobar and I urge our colleagues to join us in a resolution declaring gun violence a national public health crisis. This is just the beginning, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman's time's expired.
And we will continue to pass more gun regulations.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, can I inquire how much time each side has left?
Gentleman from New York has 13 and a quarter. Gentleman from Ohio has 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Today in our country, 321 people will be shot. 111 of them will die from those gunshots. 22 of the people who are shot every day in this country are kids, just like the 19 fourth graders sitting in their classroom while they were massacred in Uvalde. So I ask my colleagues, how many more? How many more innocent people need to die? How many more elders murdered at a grocery store or in their houses of worship? How many more children slaughtered in their classroom will be enough to do something to save lives? We're considering the most basic measures to keep people safe from gun violence, to keep families from having to ID their children by DNA after their bodies were destroyed by a weapon of war, raising the age to 21 to buy assault rifles, safe gun storage, cracking down on gun trafficking. These are obvious solutions. Vote yes to protect families. Vote yes to save our children.
Gentleman from Ohio.
We reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Oregon, Mr. Blumenauer.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
It's been heart-wrenching hearing the stories on the floor today. America's not unique with gun violence. What is unique is that America has accepted the slaughter. Unlike Britain, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Norway, after horrific events, they acted decisively to reduce gun violence, and it worked. We've stood by while the carnage continues, to our shame. America should not be the only rich country that cannot protect our children. After events in Oregon, I met with victims of gun violence, and they developed a package that looks a lot like what we're voting on today. It's no longer acceptable for gun violence enablers to hide behind thoughts and prayers. If other countries can protect their families, so can we. Pass this package.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Nevada, Mr. Horsford.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, later this month, 30 years to the day, my father was shot and killed by senseless gun violence. And so I rise today with a heavy heart for those who have been murdered by gun violence and the survivors who now must live with the trauma every single day. A heavy heart for the 58 victims and survivors from my hometown of Las Vegas that experienced the worst mass shooting in U.S. history. A heavy heart for the parents and families of Uvalde, whose children were murdered while at school. A heavy heart for the Black Americans that were murdered at a grocery store in Buffalo. A heavy heart for the doctors and nurses that were killed at a hospital in Tulsa. I have a heavy heart, but I also have courage to protect our children, and I will continue to work to break the cycle of violence. The question is, do my colleagues have the courage to protect our kids? Vote yes on this legislation.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 3.5 minutes to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Stubbe.
Gentleman is recognized for 3.5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Guns are not the cause of evil. Just like the vehicle used by the domestic terrorists in Waukesha, Wisconsin to mow down innocent people in a parade, killing 6, the vehicle used was not the cause of that evil. The person driving it was. Why are not the victims of that heinous act pictures being shown by the Democrats on the floor today, like those victims in Uvalde? Where was the left's cry to ban vehicles that killed those innocent lives in Waukesha? There are no cries to ban cars because that's not on the left's agenda. Banning guns is, and Democrats use these heinous crimes to further the long-sought-after political objective of disarming America. And many Democrats in this chamber have called for outright bans on certain firearms. There is a moral decay in our country that has been created by the left. They have torn down traditional institutions, took God out of our classrooms, and systematically destroyed the notion of traditional families and values. Just look at these numbers in a recent article from the Christian Post. 75% of most cited school shooters in America are fatherless. 60% of America's rapists grew up without fathers. 63% of teenagers who commit suicide don't have a father in their life. 72% of adolescent murderers are fatherless. The same was true for the murderer at Robb Elementary, and I could go on. Why isn't the majority talking about that? Why isn't the majority talking about solutions to have role models in our children's lives? Because that doesn't accomplish a political objective for them. This bill, nor any bill before us this week, will stop mass shootings. This bill won't even decrease gun violence, and the facts and evidence from the jurisdictions with similar policies in place makes that clear. Just look at any holiday weekend in Chicago and see how many people have been shot with many of these policies already in place. This bill is simply a step further to restrict the ability of law-abiding citizens to own firearms and defend themselves, while doing nothing to address the cultural rot that leads to these acts. This bill seeks to take the Second Amendment rights away from 18 to 20-year-olds by taking their ability to purchase a firearm. Comparing census data on the total 18 to 20-year-old population with DOJ data on violent crimes committed by that age group, and this includes violent crimes not involving guns, only 0.3% of 18 to 20-year-olds commit violent crimes in a year. When you look at murder, including murder without guns, only 0.013% of 18 to 20-year-olds commit murder in a year. So today, Democrats are going to take away the lawful right for 99.7% of adult Americans between the age of 18 and 20 for the acts of a few wicked people. Now think about that. So the daughter off to college, living by herself, can't buy a shotgun to keep in her home to protect herself against a rapist. All because 0.3% of that age group has committed a violent crime. The magazine limits in this bill are even more egregious because it affects all Americans in all firearms, not just rifles, and will effectively serve as a ban on most commonly used handguns. And as I demonstrated in the Judiciary Committee last week, numerous firearms that millions of Americans use every single day to protect themselves and their families could be rendered useless by a 15-round magazine limit, and those 15-round magazine limits who have absolutely no effect on solving mass shootings. I will not yield. I urge my colleagues to stand for freedom, to stand for the Constitution, and to stand for the right of law-abiding citizens to defend themselves. And I yield back.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent to insert into the record a June 4, 2022 New York Times article entitled "The Mass Shootings Where Stricter Gun Laws Might Have Made a Difference."
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from California, Ms. Lee.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of H.R. 7910, the Protecting Our Kids Act. Thank you, Chairman Nadler, for bringing these bills to the floor. Gun violence is responsible for more than 32,000 deaths each year. This is a heartbreaking moment for so many of us. This is a public health crisis in our country. It's an epidemic. The victims of Buffalo and Uvalde, Tulsa, and other mass shootings, they deserve more than our thoughts and our prayers. Last week, I met with young gun violence survivors in my district. They spoke powerfully about the cycle of violence and easy access to guns, especially ghost guns. And they talked about the trauma endured by themselves, their families, and their communities. And this is nothing new. This has been going on for so many years. And they're asking us to take action to save lives. This bill responds to their call by raising the age for purchase of certain firearms.
This time's expired.
May I have another 30 seconds? Mr. Chairman.
I'll grant the gentlelady an extra 15 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. All I want to say is all of our children who have died due to gun violence, they had a right to live and they had a right to life. And so I urge all of my colleagues to vote yes and to take action so that we can save countless lives. Let's protect our kids. Thank you again, Chairman Nadler.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Texas, Mr. Allred.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. After the mass shooting in El Paso in 2019, I received a letter from then 6-year-old Cal from Rowlett, Texas. He wrote, "When kids get shot, that's less friends to play with. When I grow up, I don't want to hear any more on the news about people being killed with guns." He was 6, and he had to write that to his congressman. Today, just 3 years later, he was the same age as some of the kids murdered in Uvalde. I refuse that there is nothing we can do. I refuse to say there's nothing we can do to protect kids like Cal or my sons in their schools. We have to act by passing common sense measures like raising the age to 21 to buy an assault-style weapon, banning high-capacity magazines, and increasing safe storage that will save lives. This legislation, the Protecting Our Kids Act, will save lives. I urge my colleagues to vote yes to help us save lives, and for the Senate to finally act and to join us in trying to end this crisis. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
We reserve, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from New York, Ms. Velasquez.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Madam Speaker, we are here today because for the victims of Uvalde, it's too late. For the victims of Parkland, it's too late. For the victims of Sandy Hook, it is too late. For the victims of Columbine, it's too late. Constituents from my district are still reeling from recent gun violence incidents. We all saw the images of people running desperately away from the shooter at the subway station in Sunset Park. I am tired of watching again and again my constituents suffer from horrific acts of gun violence. This legislation is a necessary step to prevent gun violence from happening in our schools, places of worship, grocery store, malls, public transportation. Moreover, it imposes stronger regulations on those that can buy these weapons of war. Congress cannot be too late anymore. Enough is enough.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Washington, Ms. Delbene.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today in support of the Protecting Our Kids Act. I'm a parent of 2 great kids, and when they were young, my husband and I would drop them off at school, and we were confident that they were in a safe space. But for so many parents, that's no longer the case. I recently hosted a roundtable with some of the over 1,000 constituents who have written or called into my office following the tragedies in Uvalde and Buffalo and the over 240 mass shootings in 2022. It's heartbreaking to hear how parents have to explain to their kids what to do if there's an active shooter, as if it's inevitable. We know what we can do to help prevent future tragedies like Uvalde. We can pass common sense gun safety policies like this legislation. Enough is enough. We have to end the senseless deaths of our children and our neighbors. Vote yes. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I yield 3 minutes to the gentleman from Kentucky, Mr. Massey.
Gentleman's recognized for 3 minutes.
I thank the gentleman from Ohio. You know, the Democrats today say they don't want to take your guns away. Well, then why does the legislation do just that? What they should say today is we don't want to take all of the guns away from all of the people just yet, because we know we can't get away with that. The reality is the anti-Second Amendment lobby has vastly outspent all of the pro-Second Amendment groups put together in the last several elections. Who is in the pocket of who? So, the red flag laws, these take all of the guns from some of the people, and the bill that will pass tonight, if the Democrats are fortunate enough to do so, will take some of the guns from all of the people. Now, why are gun owners concerned? Why are the gun owners who don't own so-called high-capacity magazines, for instance, concerned? Why are the gun owners who don't own, for instance, AR-15 style rifles concerned about this legislation? Because they know the legislation won't work, and the response to this unserious, unconstitutional legislation that will allow the school shootings to continue will be more gun control from the Democrats. Let me give you an example. They have a high-capacity magazine ban in here that bans any magazine that can accept over 15 rounds. Well, guess what? At Virginia Tech, the shooter carried 17 magazines, none of which held more than 15 rounds, most of which held 10 rounds. The shooter at Columbine carried 13 magazines, each of which held 10 rounds. This legislation would have done absolutely nothing. It's not about how many rounds does the magazine hold. It's about the evil intent of the shooter, and is there somebody there with the capacity to stop that shooter before they can get going? Why is this legislation dead on arrival in the Senate? Why is it dead on arrival in the Supreme Court? One of my colleagues has already acknowledged they know this is unconstitutional, and they'll pack the court if they have to. They said it in Judiciary Committee to keep this legislation alive after it should long since die. But why is it dead? Because Americans don't support it. You've quoted statistics. Those statistics are fake. If they were true, this would breeze through the Senate. But they're not. And so I urge my colleagues to respect the Constitution, respect the will of the American people, to respect the safety of American citizens, and most of all, the safety of children. Let's do something to protect them instead of these fake virtue signals that will do nothing but to curtail the Second Amendment rights of Americans. And with that, I yield back to the chairman.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from Illinois, Mr. Davis.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise in strong support of H.R. 7910, Protecting Our Kids Act. You know, I'm so tired of hearing about Chicago and other big cities. Local governments do what they can, do what they will, but this is not a local issue. This is a national issue. It is a national problem, and it requires a national solution. And so I urge all of my colleagues, no matter where you're from, make sure that you vote to protect our kids. And the only way to do that is get rid of these assault weapons and seriously reduce the number of guns in our society. And I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Michigan, Ms. Dingell.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a child, I lived with a man, my father, who should not have had access to a gun. When his temper flared, we would hide in the closet, my brothers and sisters, praying we would see the morning. My baby sister never recovered from those fears and ultimately died by suicide, haunted by the memories. Too many children are living with those fears today, in classrooms and in their homes. We cannot afford to look away once again and do nothing. 28 years ago, when the assault weapons ban was debated, my husband, then an NRA board member, and who, by the way, slept with the gun under his pillow until the day he died, made one of the toughest votes of his career. He supported the bill, though he didn't agree with everything in it. We all have a job to do for our country. I don't want to take the guns away from any responsible gun owner, but the clock is ticking. Who will be the next mass shooting? Who's the next target? What do we want our American story to be? We need to act now.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, I now yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentlelady from Nevada, Ms. Titus.
Gentlelady from Nevada is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you very much. You know, I had intended to stand up here and speak about my provision preventing bump stocks be added to guns, but after sitting here and listening for several hours, my colleagues across the aisle, they've been misrepresenting the Second Amendment, they've been pretending to care about children, and they've been blubbering about their need for big guns to protect themselves. I just got to say one thing. America is listening, and it will remember who allowed this plague to continue to kill our loved ones and spread disaster around our country. They're listening, and they'll remember who it was. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Gentleman from Ohio.
Madam Speaker, we reserve.
Gentleman from New York.
I reserve.
Who seeks time?
We're prepared to close.
The gentleman from New York is prepared to close. The gentleman from Ohio prepared to close?
Yes, Madam Speaker, but I will yield 1.5 minutes to my friend from Florida, Mr. Gates.
Gentleman is recognized for 1.5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. Well, we have heard the plan from Democrats. This is not a modest trimming around the edges of gun laws. It has been a full-throated assault on the Second Amendment, a desire to deprive people of the weapons that they choose at the age that they achieve majority. And we've heard countless examples of where the good guy with the gun has been the difference between more or less bloodshed. But this is particularly an aggrieved time to bring this legislation forward because we heard the Speaker of the House recently say that members of the Republican Party were members of a cult. So you now have House Democrats demeaning, defaming, calling extremists tens of millions of Americans while they try to disarm you and then subsequently defund the police. And so no good guys are coming when the woke mob ends up at your door. That's their plan for America, and gun control, unrestrained gun control, is a key part of it. And just like they said, they'll pack the court, they'll blow up the filibuster, they'll abuse every more of this place for the opportunity to take down the Second Amendment. That's what's at issue. That's what we're fighting for. And Republicans in the United States Senate should not sign up for this charade. They should stand with our fellow Americans for the Constitution and with American gun owners. I yield back to the gentleman from Ohio.
Is the gentleman from Ohio prepared to close?
We are, Madam Speaker.
Is the gentleman from New York prepared to close?
No, we're not. Hold on. Ms. Jackson-Lee. So Ms. Jackson-Lee for 1 minute.
I recognize Ms. Jackson-Lee for 1 minute.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
Not sit idly by to hear the abuse of the Second Amendment that Judge Scalia would not recognize, and that is that there are no restrictions. I believe Judge Scalia would look at these dead babies and realize that the Constitution and the Second Amendment that is protected, untouched, would ask you the question, is there no sense of responsibility to be able to provide restrictions to save lives? How dare you suggest that we cannot provide the kind of laws in Protecting Our Kids Act that provides the incentives and guidelines to save lives? Ask the mothers and fathers of these babies. The Second Amendment is not absolute. It does allow restrictions, just as President Reagan said he sees no reason for an AK-47 at that time to be used for sport or to be used for anything else. Support our babies and vote for this act. Where's your responsibility and courage? I yield back.
Is the gentleman from Ohio prepared to close? Is the gentleman from New York prepared to close? Gentleman from Ohio is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Representative Massey was right on target when he said red flag laws take all guns from some people and they do so without due process. This bill takes some guns from all people, but Democrats say, don't worry, we're not out to get the Second Amendment. Really? Here's what Representative Cicilline said in committee last week. Spare me the BS about constitutional rights. Here's what Representative Jones said last week in committee. If the filibuster obstructs us, we will abolish it. If the Supreme Court objects, we will expand it. We will not rest until we have taken weapons out of circulation in our communities. Each and every day we will do whatever it takes, whatever it takes. They are out to get the Second Amendment. The right of the American people, the right of we the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's what bothers them. They don't trust we the people. They're smarter than us. They're better. They don't trust law-abiding American citizens. They do not trust them. And that's what, that is what is so wrong with the direction we're going with this legislation, the legislation they're going to bring to the floor tomorrow. We have seen they don't trust Americans to exercise their First Amendment liberties. Now they're going after their Second Amendment liberties, and that red flag law that they're going to bring up tomorrow goes after the Fifth Amendment due process rights that we enjoy as American citizens. That's why we should oppose this legislation and the legislation tomorrow. And I hope, as my friend from Florida said, I hope the United States Senate doesn't go down this red flag trail that they are now on and further take away liberties from law-abiding American people. With that, we yield back, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman from New York.
Madam Speaker, too many cities in this country have become a shorthand for mass shooting. Newtown, San Bernardino, Charleston, Las Vegas, Parkland, Santa Fe, El Paso, Buffalo, Uvalde, the list goes on. How many more communities must be visited by tragedy before we take action? How many more parents need to bury their own children because an 18-year-old with an AR-15 assault rifle stormed into the school? How many more children must grow up without a parent because a high-capacity magazine allowed a shooter to spray dozens of bullets through a supermarket? Let today be the day that we begin to end this cycle of gun violence and we take meaningful action to protect our communities and most of all to protect our kids. You know, the Republicans tell us that we want to defund the police. We don't want to defund the police. President Biden just said the other day we want to fund the police. They want to defund the police. They want to disarm the police. What chance does a policeman with a regular service revolver have against someone with an AR-15 assault rifle? None at all. They want to make sure that our police have no chance at all to resist the dishonest people who use weapons of war, because weapons of war overwhelm whatever any policeman may have. That's the problem here. The problem here is that they want to defund, or I shouldn't say defund, they want to disarm our police compared to the crooks and the murderers who have the weapons of war which can outweigh the service revolvers than any police officer will have. So we want to protect the police officers. We want them to not be outgunned by the murderers. That's where we are. That's what this bill does. That's perhaps why they're afraid of this bill. But we must pass this bill to save our police officers, to save our communities, to save our children. I yield back.
Pursuant to House Resolution 1153, the previous question is ordered. Pursuant to Section 3A of House Resolution 1153, the Chair will put the question on retaining each title of the bill as amended. The Chair will put the question on retaining Title I of the bill, and the question will be, shall Title I be retained? Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on retaining Title I of H.R. 7910 will be followed by 5-minute votes on retaining Title II, retaining Title III, retaining Title IV, retaining Title V, retaining Title VI, retaining Title VII, the motion to recommit if offered, passage of the bill if ordered, and motions to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 7352, H.R. 7334, H.R. 5879, H.R. 7622, H.R. 7664, H.R. 7670, H.R. 7694, H.R. 7776, and H.R. 7667. Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 1153, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 15-minute vote. This is the gentleman from New York Rise.
As a member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Representative Bobby Rush, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title I.
For what purpose is the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McKeechan of Virginia, Mr. Swazi, Ms. Moore, Mr. Evans, Mr. Sherman, Ms. Barragan, Mr. Lowenthal, and Mr. Ryan, I inform the House that these 8 members will vote yes on retaining Title I.
For what purpose is the gentleman from Texas rise? No.
Is it on? For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Cawthorn of North Carolina and Ms. Boebert of Colorado, I inform the House that these members will vote no on the measure.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois seek recognition?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti of Illinois, I inform the House that he will vote yes on retaining Title I.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. Van Taylor, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Van Taylor will be voting no on Title I. Thank you.
For what purpose? For what purpose? For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
As the member designated by Mr. Price, I inform the House that Mr. Price will vote yea on retaining Title I.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio rise?
As the member designated for Ms. Chantel Brown of Ohio, I inform the House that she will vote aye on retaining Title I. As the member designated for Ms. Terry Sewell of Alabama, I inform the House that she will vote yea on the retaining Title I.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representatives Juan Vargas and Marilyn Strickland, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title I.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Albio Series, Mr. Donald Payne, Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, and Mr. Peter Welch, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title I.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by the following Californians, Ruiz, Cardenas, and Swalwell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title I.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Moulton, Ms. Wilson, and Ms. Ledger Fernandez, I inform the House that these three members will vote aye on retaining Title I.
Purposes, gentleman from Ohio Rice.
As a member designated by Mr. Bouchon of Indiana, pursuant to House Resolution 8, I inform the House that Mr. Bouchon will vote nay on Title I of H.R. 7910. Thank you.
For purposes, the gentleman from Tennessee Rice.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, and Mr. Guest of Mississippi, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks, Mr. Loudermilk, and Mr. Guest will all vote nay on Title I. Thank you.
What purposes, the gentleman from Arizona Rice.
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Chairman DeFazio, I inform the House that Chairman DeFazio will vote yes on retaining Title I.
What purposes, the gentleman from Pennsylvania Rice.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote no on Title I.
What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote no on Title I. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Bass of California, Mr. Lamb of Pennsylvania, and Mr. Torres of New York, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on H.R. 7910.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Chairwoman Waters, Representative Gomez, and Representative Sanchez of California, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title I. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ and Ms. Frankel of Florida, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title I.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparks, both of Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparks will both vote no on Title I.
What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Mace of South Carolina, I inform the House that Ms. Mace will vote no on Title I.
Vote. The yeas are 228. The nays are 199. The title is retained. The chair will now put the question on retaining Title II of the bill. The question is, shall Title II be retained? Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 1153, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise? You rise.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote no on Title II.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Lamb of Pennsylvania, Mr. Torres of New York, and Ms. Bass of California, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Bashan of Indiana, I inform the House that Mr. Bashan will vote nay on Title II of H.R. 7910.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Representative Waters, Gomez, and Sanchez of California, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title II. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Boebert of Colorado and Mr. Cawthorn of North Carolina, I inform the House that these members will vote no on the measure.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
As a member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Representative Rush, I inform the House these members will vote yea on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Guest of Mississippi, and Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks, Mr. Guest, and Mr. Loudermilk will all vote nay on Title II. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Swazi, Mr. Ryan, Dr. Lowenthal, Ms. Barragan, Mr. Sherman, Mr. Evans, Ms. Moore, and Mr. McKeechan, I inform the House that these 8 members will vote yes on retaining Title II.
What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. Van Taylor, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Van Taylor will be voting nay on Title II. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Moulton, Ms. Leger Fernandez, and Ms. Wilson, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Price, I inform the House that Mr. Price will vote yea on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti of Illinois, I inform the House that he will vote yes on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio rise?
As the member designated for members Chantel Brown and Terry Sewell, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by the following Californians, Ruiz, Cardenas, and Swalwell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, Mr. Peter Welch, Mr. Donald Payne, and Mr. Albio Series, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
As the member designated by Chairman DeFazio, I inform the House that Chairman DeFazio will vote yes on retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ and Ms. Frankel of Florida, I inform the House that both members will vote yea on Title II, retaining Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparks, both of Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparks will both vote no on Title II.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representatives Juan Vargas and Marilyn Strickland, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title II.
What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote no on Title II. Thank you.
This vote, the yeas are 224, the yeas are 195. The title is Mr. Smucker. Mr. Smucker votes no. Ms. Schakowsky. Ms. Schakowsky votes aye. Ms. Bush votes aye. Mr. Lamborn. Mr. Lamborn votes no. On this vote, the yeas are 226, the nays are 197. The title is retained. The chair will now put the question on retaining Title III of the bill. The question is, shall Title III be retained? Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 1153, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote. What purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by members Torres, Bass, and Lamb, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title III.
What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Van Taylor, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Van Taylor will be voting nay on Title III. Thank you.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Representative Waters, Representative Sanchez, Representative Gomez, all of California, inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title III.
What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise? Or, I'm sorry, Pennsylvania.
Pennsylvania. As the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote no on Title III.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McEachin, Mr. Ryan, Dr. Lowenthal, Ms. Barragan, Mr. Sherman, Mr. Evans, Ms. Moore, and Mr. Swazi, inform the House that these 8 members will vote yes on retaining Title III.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Bashan of Indiana, I inform the House that Mr. Bashan will vote no on Title III of 7910.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Representative Bobby Rush, I inform the House these members will vote yea on retaining Title III.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Guest of Mississippi, and Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks, Mr. Guest, and Mr. Loudermilk will all vote nay on Title III. Thank you.
What purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Wilson, Ms. Leger-Fernandez, and Mr. Moulton, I inform the House that these 3 members will vote yea on retaining Title III.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Boebert of Colorado, I inform the House that Ms. Boebert will vote no on the measure.
What purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Price, I inform the House that Mr. Price will vote yea on retaining Title III.
What purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by the following Californias, Ruiz, Cardenas, and Swalwell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title III.
What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti of Illinois, I inform the House that he will vote yes on retaining Title III.
What purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise? Gentleman from Arizona.
As a member designated by Chairman DeFazio, I inform the House that Chairman DeFazio will vote yes on retaining Title III.
What purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representatives Marilyn Strickland and Juan Vargas, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title III.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Albio's series, Mr. Donald Payne, Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, and Mr. Peter Welch, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title III.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote no on Title III.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ and Ms. Frankel of Florida, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title III.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio rise?
As the member designated by Chantel Brown and Terry Sewell, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title III.
Oh, for what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
As a member designated by Ms. Walorski from Indiana and Ms. Sparts from Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparts will both vote nay on Title III.
On this vote, the yeas are 226, the nays are 194. The title is retained. Chair will now put the question on retaining Title IV of the bill. The question is, shall Title IV be retained? Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 1153, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. And again, this will be a 5-minute vote. For what purposes, gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Congressman Ruiz, Cardenas, and Swalwell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on Title IV.
For what purposes, gentleman from Texas rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Van Taylor, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Van Taylor will be voting no on Title IV. Thank you.
For what purposes, gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by members Lamb, Bass, and Torres, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title IV.
For what purposes, gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Chairwoman Waters, Representative Sanchez, and Gomez, all of California, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title IV.
Purposes, gentleman from Pennsylvania rise.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote no on Title IV.
What purposes, gentlelady from Ohio rise?
As the member designated for members Terry Sewell and Chantel Brown, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title IV.
What purposes, gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Guest of Mississippi, Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks, Mr. Guest, and Mr. Loudermilk will all vote nay on Title IV. Thank you.
For what purposes, gentleman from California rise? Gentleman from California.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representatives Juan Vargas and Marilyn Strickland, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title IV.
For what purposes, gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Boebert of Colorado, I inform the House that Ms. Boebert will vote no on the measure.
What purposes, gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Albio Series, Mr. Donald Payne, Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, and Mr. Peter Welch, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title IV.
What purposes, gentleman from Ohio rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Bashan of Indiana, I inform the House that Mr. Bashan will vote nay on Title IV of H.R. 7910.
What purposes, gentleman from New York rise?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Representative Rush, I inform the House these members will vote yea on retaining Title IV.
What purposes, gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote no on Title IV. Thank
What
you.
purposes, gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Price, I inform the House that Mr. Price will vote yea on retaining Title IV.
What purposes, gentleman from Arizona rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Chairman DeFazio, I inform the House that Chairman DeFazio will vote yes on retaining Title IV.
This is the gentleman from Virginia rise.
Madam Speaker, the member designated by Mr. Swazi, Mr. Ryan, Dr. Lowenthal, Ms. Barragan, Mr. Sherman, Mr. Evans, Ms. Moore, and Mr. McKeechin. I inform the House that these 8 members will vote yes on retaining Title IV.
2 minutes remaining. For what purposes, the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti of Illinois, I inform the House that Mr. Krishnamurti will vote yes on retaining Title IV.
For what purposes, the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ and Ms. Frankel of Florida, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title IV.
For what purposes, the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparts, both of Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparts will both vote no on Title IV.
What purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Wilson, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, and Mr. Moulton, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title IV.
Does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Mace of South Carolina, I inform the House that Ms. Mace will vote no on Title IV.
On this vote, the yeas are 220, the nays are 205. The title is retained. The chair will now put the question on retaining Title V of the bill. The question is, shall Title V be retained? Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 1153, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote. What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti of Illinois, I inform the House that Mr. Krishnamurti will vote yes on retaining Title V.
What purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Representatives Juan Vargas and Marilyn Strickland, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title V.
What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Mace of South Carolina, I inform the House that Ms. Mace will vote no on Title V.
What purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Donald Payne, Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, Mr. Albio Series, and Mr. Peter Welch, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title V.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote no on Title V.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Chairwoman Waters, Representative Sanchez and Gomez, all of California, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title V.
What purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote no on Title V.
What purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by members Lamb, Bass, and Torres, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title V.
What purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Boebert of Colorado, I inform the House that Ms. Boebert will vote no on the measure.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Swalwell, Cardenas, and Reese, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on Title V.
What purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Guest of Mississippi, and Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks, Mr. Guest, and Mr. Loudermilk will all vote nay on Title V. Thank you.
What purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Price, I inform the House that Mr. Price will vote yea on retaining Title V.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As the member designated by Mr. Van Taylor, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Van Taylor will be voting nay on Title V. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Chairman DeFazio, I inform the House that Mr. DeFazio will vote yes on retaining Title V.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Bashan of Indiana, I inform the House that Mr. Bashan will vote nay on Title V of H.R. 7910.
Two minutes remaining. For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, the member designated by Mr. Swazi, Mr. Evans, Mr. McKeechan, Ms. Moore, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Sherman, Mr. Barragan, Mr. Lowenthal. I think that's all. And Mr. Swazi, I inform the House that these 8 members will vote yes on retaining Title V.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
As a member designated by Ms. Wilson, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, and Mr. Moulton, I inform the House that these 3 members will vote yea on retaining Title V.
Does the gentleman from New York rise?
As the member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Representative Rush, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title V.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparks, both of Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparks will both vote no on Title V.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ and Ms. Frankel of Florida, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title V.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio rise?
As the member designated for Member Chantel Brown and Terry Sewell, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title V.
The yeas are 233, the nays are 194. The title is retained. The chair will now put the question on retaining Title VI of the bill. The question is, shall Title VI be retained? Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 1153, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio rise?
As the member designated for Member Chantel Brown and Terry Sewell, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title VI.
Does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
As the member designated by Chairman DeFazio, I inform the House that Chairman DeFazio will vote yes on retaining Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
As the member designated by Ms. Boebert of Colorado, I inform the House that Ms. Boebert will vote no on the measure.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
As a member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Representative Rush, I inform the House these members will vote yea on retaining Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Bashan of Indiana, I inform the House that Mr. Bashan will vote nay on Title VI of H.R. 7910.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by members Lamb, Bass, and Torres, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote no on Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti, I inform the House that he will vote yes on retaining Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Guest of Mississippi, and Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks, Mr. Guest, and Mr. Loudermilk will all vote nay on Title VI. Thank you.
Gentlelady from Texas
Madam
rise.
Speaker, designated by Representative Waters, Gomez, and Sanchez, all of California, inform the House members that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VI. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Mace of South Carolina, I inform the House that Ms. Mace will vote no on Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Representatives Juan Vargas and Marilyn Strickland, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VI.
Purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote no on Title VI. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Representative Price, I inform the House that Representative Price will vote yea on retaining Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ and Ms. Frankel of Florida, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title VI.
What purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Van Taylor, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Van Taylor will be voting nay on Title VI. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Ruiz, Cardenas, and Swalwell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
As a member designated by Ms. Leger-Fernandez, Ms. Wilson, and Mr. Moulton, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparts, both of Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Walorski and Ms. Sparts will both vote no on Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, Mr. Donald Payne, Mr. Albio Series, and Mr. Peter Welch, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VI.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Sherman, Mr. Evans, Ms. Moore, Mr. Swazi, Mr. Ryan, Mr. Lowenthal, Ms. Barragan, and Mr. McEachin, I inform the House that these 8 members will vote yes on retaining Title VI.
The yeas are 220, the nays are 207. The title is retained. Chair will now put the question on retaining Title VII of the bill. The question is, shall Title VII be retained? Pursuant to Section 3B of House Resolution 1153, the yeas and nays are ordered, and members will record their votes by electronic device. Again, this will be a 5-minute vote. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Texas rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Representative Waters, Gomez, and Sanchez of California, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
As the member designated by Mr. Price, I inform the House that Mr. Price will vote yea on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As a member designated by Mr. Van Taylor, I'd like to inform the House that Mr. Van Taylor will be voting yea on Title VII. Thank you.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Christ and Ms. Frankel of Florida, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Bashan of Indiana, I inform the House that Mr. Bashan will vote yes on Title VII of H.R. 7910.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Designated by Ms. Mace of South Carolina, I inform the House that Ms. Mace will vote yes on Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from California rise?
As a member designated by Representatives Juan Vargas and Marilyn Strickland, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama and Mr. Guest of Mississippi, Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, I inform the House that Mr. Brooks, Mr. Guest, and Mr. Loudermilk all will vote yea on Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New Jersey rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Albio Series, Mr. Donald Payne, Ms. Ann Kirkpatrick, and Mr. Peter Welch, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote no on Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from New York rise?
As a member designated by Chairwoman Eddie Bernice Johnson and Representative Bobby Rush, I inform the House these members will vote yea on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Boebert of Colorado, I inform the House that Ms. Boebert will vote aye on the measure.
Does the gentleman from California rise?
Madam Speaker, as member designated by Congress members Ruiz, Cardenas, and Swalwell, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Arizona rise?
As the member designated by Chairman DeFazio, I inform the House that Chairman DeFazio will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
Two minutes remaining. For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Walorski of Indiana, I inform the House Ms. Walorski will vote no on Title VII, and as a member designated by Ms. Sparts of Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Sparts will vote yes on Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by members Bass, Torres, and Lamb, I inform the House that these members will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
One remaining. For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Moulton, Ms. Ledger Fernandez, and Ms. Wilson, I inform the House that these three members will vote yea on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. McKeechan, Mr. Sherman, Dr. Lowenthal, Ms. Barragan, Ms. Moore, Mr. Swazi, Mr. Evans, and Mr. McKeechan, I inform the House that these 8 members will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
Okay. Gentleman from Virginia.
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Ryan of Ohio, I inform the House that he will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
Rise.
As the member designated by Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, I inform the House that Mr. Johnson will vote yes on Title VII. Thank you.
Okay, so it's good. Purposes, the gentlelady from Ohio rise.
As the member designated by members Chantel Brown and Terry Sewell, I inform the House that these members will vote yea on retaining Title VII.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti of Illinois, I inform the House that Mr. Krishnamurti will vote yes on retaining Title VII.
On this vote, the yeas are 380 and the nays are 47. The title is retained. Question now occurs on engrossment and third reading of the bill. All in favor say aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it, third reading.
A bill to amend Title 18 United States Code to provide for an increased age limit on the purchase of certain firearms, prevent gun trafficking, modernize the prohibition on untraceable firearms, encourage the safe storage of firearms, and for other purposes.
House will come to order. For what purpose does the gentleman from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Hudson of North Carolina moves to recommit the bill H.R. 7910 to the Committee on the Judiciary.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to commit. The question is on the motion. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. No. The noes have it. The motion is not agreed to. Gentleman from North Carolina.
Madam Speaker, I request the yeas and the nays.
Pursuant to Section 3S of House Resolution 8, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device, and this will be a 5-minute vote. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Delaware rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by members Bass, Lamb, and Torres, I inform the House that these members will vote no on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Mace of South Carolina, I inform the House that Ms. Mace will vote yes on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Colorado rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Wilson, Ms. Leger-Fernandez, and Mr. Moulton, I inform the House that these three members will vote no on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Ohio rise?
As a member designated by Mr. Bashan of Indiana, I inform the House that Mr. Vachon will vote yes on the motion to recommit
For what
HR
purpose does the gentleman from Illinois rise?
As the member designated by Mr. Krishnamurti of Illinois, I inform the House that he will vote no on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Pennsylvania rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Thompson of Pennsylvania, I inform the House that Mr. Thompson will vote yes on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from North Carolina rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Price, I inform the House that Mr. Price will vote nay on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Florida rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Ms. Boebert of Colorado, I inform the House that Ms. Boebert will vote no on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Mr. Ryan, Mr. Sherman, Mr. Swazi, Dr. Lowenthal, Mr. Evans, Ms. Moore, Ms. Barragan, and Mr. McEachin, I inform the House that these members will vote no on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Indiana rise?
Madam Speaker, as a member designated by Ms. Sparts and Ms. Walorski of Indiana, I inform the House that Ms. Sparts and Ms. Walorski will both vote yes on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentlelady from Ohio rise?
As the member designated by members Chantel Brown and Terry Sewell, I inform the House that these members will vote nay on the motion to recommit.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Tennessee rise?
Madam Speaker, as the member designated by Mr. Brooks of Alabama, Mr. Guest of Mississippi, Mr. Loudermilk of Georgia, I inform the House of Mr. Brooks, Mr. Guest,